It's been a year since this COVID crisis started, and in that first week, unbelievably, we lost one of our beloved waiters at Marie's Crisis. His name was Marc Castelli, and he was very popular and well known in the Marie's family and circle of friends, and he is greatly missed. And it seems very unreal that he's not going to be coming back to us as the bar is reopening. So to mark the year, to mark Mark's passing, Maddie McCloskey has volunteered to put together a tribute to him. And so she's put some questions to us about Mark, and here we go. Question 1. What is your favorite aspect of Mark's personality?
I love how powerful it was. He's one of those people who affected everyone around them. Highs, lows, goods, bads.
I have a thing I want to say, but it doesn't answer that question.
My favorite aspect of Mark's personality was that he could be this loving bear of a human with a gigantic heart who would just turn on a dime to be the living embodiment of Dorothy Spornak or Ursula the Sea Hag, who just couldn't be bothered with you. And for that, he really, truly was a member of my family.
So Marc Castelli turned out to be one of those friends that even though we didn't hang out outside of Marie's, he was a true friend.
Okay, so I know this is going to be emotional, so I'm just going to say now that my favorite part of Mark's personality was that he was always just there.
Mark was a gregarious queen from a time long since past, and I loved this about him, and I found it so inspiring about him, and it was so winning.
A powerful presence in Marie's.
My favorite aspect of Mark's personality, there's a lot to choose from.
His commitment to that sardonic, sarcastic sense of humor that he had.
His sense of humor.
How much he loved the customers.
His, bigger than life personality.
His big loving heart.
His dedication to family.
No one was a stranger to him.
He also was such a generous soul.
He was a presence.
But honestly, I think it's the grumpier part of his personality that I appreciated the most.
Didn't compromise himself. Usually knew where he stood about things.
Well, the thing that comes out to me by far is his kindness.
I always felt that his personality just was, he had that dry, sarcastic sense of humor at times.
His sense of humor was just so very wonderful, and that's what he was so gifted at.
It was always tinged with love,
But he always had a smile. He always cared.
Especially when it came down to what he was doing at Marie's.
Not only that, but the customers too.
Working with customers.
He really loved. He loved the customers. He really did.
He loved that, and he loved talking to people.
The new people, the regulars.
And he made people feel welcome.
He loved to introduce people to Marie's Crisis. He had a whole speech that he would give new people, and he would say, "Welcome to Marie's," and he'd say, "Our wine list is red and white." And don't think about fancy cocktails like pina coladas or Cosmos or not martinis, margaritas. He's like, think of simple things, And he would say, don't think Jose Cuervo or Patron.
And just watching, I remember him interacting with people at my piano.
He had a way of bringing it all together for us.
He would force you into being charmed by him.
And he also loved shunning them.
But he had a whole speech that he would give to new people coming in, welcoming them and introducing them to the culture of Marie's and what Marie's was like. And he just loved to share his world with new people.
You met him and he was open and he was kind and he was welcoming, and you felt like you had known him for a very long time.
And it was beautiful.
Like he had, there was a crusty exterior to him that could certainly give as good as it could take, or take as good as it could, whatever, you know what I mean.
And he would be able to say things that out of context would sound bitter or jaded, and he just made it so funny.
He had the best dad jokes and the best gay jokes and the best just way to make you laugh in the moment.
Marc was really funny.
But always with love.
My favorite was when he would sing at the bar under his breath while other songs were happening, and it would be, it usually happened like right after I finished my shift. Someone else had come on, and Marc would be sort of singing along but changing the lyrics, and they were they were pretty naughty. It was fun. It was like being back in high school theater or college theater where you rewrite the lyrics to everything just because it's funny to you.
He always had his performer brain on. If he would try out a new joke, if he would try out new material in the room and it got a laugh, you know that it would then be there again the next week. And if something didn't get the reaction that he wanted, then he knew to cut it. So his banter became so well honed.
He was very, he was unafraid to do things, like performance-wise especially, and I always admired that.
And if it were a song that we had sung a million times before, he would have some sort of funny retort to a line that we had just sung or something we were about to sing, and it always got a laugh and it always got a reaction. And I just remember how he affected the room.
He always made me laugh, and that was wonderful.
And it was a mechanism for him to make other people feel comfortable, which is another most beautiful thing about Marc.
What I really loved was that he was always inquiring, not only how was my week or how you doing or whatever, but he wanted to know what he could do to help me as a pianist.
And that's something that I really enjoyed, especially like the first time with him. He just made me feel so comfortable. The first time I worked with Marc.
And that was really wonderful. Especially as the new guy.
And the chemistry was magical from the beginning.
I was so lucky to be able to see that process unfold week after week as he would continue to try new things, which of course also meant that he was thinking about us during the week and thinking up new things to say. I love that.
He was very giving.
He was a very generous soul.
When I was new to New York and I had just started working at Marie's Crisis, it turned out we both lived uptown, and so he just offered to show me around uptown, and we would go to movies and just kind of buzz around uptown, and the friendship grew from there.
He had no problem like giving tickets away that he managed to get, or taking people out to dinner, just being a generally very, very kind person. And I will always remember him for that by far the most.
His dedication to his family and just like the genuine love that would just light up in his eyes when he spoke about his family was truly remarkable. And he extended that love of family in general to when he would ask you about your family.
There was so much joy.
He brought a lot of joy.
He was so enthusiastic about the family that Marie's was, and the very specialness that it brought to Greenwich Village and to New York and even to the world. And he was a huge part of that.
Marc was just genuinely just on board with his family, with your family, with my family, with the Marie's family. It is something that I do not have as a person, and I aspire to it, and I really admired it in Marc.
On paper, it may not have looked like it, but it really was. When you saw it in person, to see the joy that he was able to bring to people.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest part of his personality that I'm always going to hold on to is the life, the joy that he brought to the space and to the people around him.
That's my favorite.
Question number 2. What is your favorite memory of Marc?
My favorite memory of Marc, oh gosh.
I have so many favorite Marc memories.
Well, my favorite memory of Marc is actually probably, it's not one thing.
It's hard to choose just one.
Is it bad that I always love when he fought with people? Like defended honors, I mean. Like, if anyone was in a problem, he was like the biggest teddy bear all night. But then if anyone had an issue with anything and there was like no dude around, he would like beef it up and he'd be like, out of my face and get out of here. And that was so not like him that it was exciting for me to see. I don't remember an exact time that I saw it.
I traveled with Marc to Australia twice, and we once had a beautiful afternoon. He took me to lunch by the Opera House, and we saw a seal, and he called him Sydney the Seal. I know he had a video of it.
Well, I had to go through a few of these to see which one really stood out the most. And my favorite is he managed to get these tickets to Hedwig when Darren Criss was in Hedwig on Broadway. And Darren Criss is a friend of the bar, and it so happened that Darren came in a couple of nights, I think, before we went to see the show, and we told him we were coming, and he said, please come backstage, and here's the number of his assistant. And so it all worked out, and we ended up backstage with Darren Criss and Marc Castelli, and we just had a really great time. It was a wonderful experience. And I think this was because a couple friends of his were not able to make it to the city and just gave him the tickets. And so we ended up having such an amazing time, a nice dinner, a wonderful show, and then an after show. So that was with Darren Criss. So that was pretty amazing. I'll never forget that. I loved it.
We ended a lot differently than we began, which I appreciate very much. As I've said, I think in the past, we had a tumultuous up and down relationship.
And we sometimes would, argue like brother and sister would.
Over the course of the first, 4 or 5 years that we worked together, because we worked on the floor together, with the same shifts, we sang the same songs, so there was some tension there and here and there. But once I got behind the bar and we were on opposite sides of that bar, our working relationship changed a lot, and for the better. And I always, let's say I came to really enjoy working with Marc.
I would always have makeup on my eye. He would always do this to take it off.
And actually looking forward when I would pick up a shift on Tuesday night, because I know he would be there and he would close, and I looked forward to it. And I really appreciated that he would always stay with me until the end. We would lock up, and that's when we got to have some of our best conversations. And those are my favorite memories of Marc. The fact that we grew much closer, and that it all ended a lot better than it began.
I do remember Marc when I first worked with him. I was still, learning the the Broadway songbook, and that was about 18 years ago. Meeting Marc, I was a little nervous and stuff, and he made me feel very comfortable from the beginning. But I just remember that our connection was when he asked me if I happened to know a song called Love Look Away from Flower Drum Song, and I knew it. So to me, this was like, yes, I do know that song. So Marc's face lit up, and he was so happy about it. He sang it, and I was so proud to play it for him. And that just created this chemistry right away for the two of us. And we enjoyed working together from that moment.
He would come in early sometimes and, and sing a song before I would break. Now, at first I thought, well, that's nice because, he's getting an opportunity to work with me, and I'm getting an opportunity to work with him. And he would then, of course, solicit tips for me and tips for himself. And so, it was another, another pass of the bowl by someone who, is kind of in charge, always resulted in a much better night for me financially. So I would share that with him normally when that would happen, and so then it became a regular routine because I don't think he expected it the first time. And then he knew that would happen, and so it continued to happen.
For me, it was always beginning of a shift and the end. That's usually when he and I caught up on things, or he'd catch me up on the latest that was going on with him. He was always happy to see me when I was working. Always asked when I was going to work again. And always loved our relationship. Me at the door and him on the floor. We always worked well together. And those memories have always got to be in the first one he sees and the last one he sees. In and out was always wound up feeling special to me.
One night earlier in my time working at Marie's, I had finished work a little early and I was sitting at the bar, and there were just a handful of people in the bar. Marc was still working as the waiter on the floor, and someone requested Rent. And so the piano player, he played the reprise of I'll Cover You, and it turned out that no one in the bar actually knew it. And so I just happened to start singing, and people took notice, and I was about to stand up and go make it a big grand performance, and he put his hand up and he said, no, sit back down, make them want it. And I continued singing, and the room was watching, and then he kind of beckoned like this, and then I slowly stood up and entered the room, and then the whole group came in at the end of the song, and he taught me in that moment how to sing to the room and not just sing in the room. And that's something that I use in many aspects of my life, not just singing in a basement in a bar in the West Village.
Marc and Frank and I used to take taxis uptown, because I lived on 54th Street at the time, and I guess Marc lived farther uptown, and Franco would go over the bridge, so she would drop us off in stages, and we had a lot of fun taking those cab rides, at 3 or 4 a.m. and or probably even later. So I think those cab rides are one of my favorite memories, and just working with him, and the few times that I got to spend with him not working, just hanging out, as friends in the bar were very special as well.
He was always asking about my mom because he'd met my mom. He met her maybe 3 times total. And I think the two of them became, buddies, and they decided they were going to go on a trip to Italy together. My mom had a few martinis.
So my sister is a doctor, and her friend had gone through a really terrible divorce, and she had all doctor friends, and they weren't, musical theater nerds per se, but they love show tunes. So Cheryl brought them, my sister Cheryl brought them to the bar, and Marc made it his mission to get that group of girls who were hiding in the corner to come out and enjoy the night. And as soon as he knew that they were my sister's friends, it was like his personal project. And by the end of the night, those really shy girls and woman who was going through something really hard in her life was on the floor singing One Day More with everyone else. And they had the best time in their life. And that was because of Marc.
My favorite memory of Marc is actually not at Marie's at all. I met Marc years before I had come into the Marie's family. I was the associate music director for the production of Hairspray that he did and was Edna in. So I helped him get ready with all of that years ago. Like, it was one of my first gigs in New York at our very faded, if you've ever heard us talk about the shit show that was the Symphony Space production of Hairspray. That was our production. Anyway, my favorite memory is looking at him before we went out on that fateful night, which, if you know the story, it was not great. The set was falling down, literally falling down, and we just looked at each other and he went, "Here we go."
One of my favorite memories of Marc is getting to see him play Edna Turnblad in Hairspray. He wanted to play that role so badly, and he was that character in many aspects of his personality. And he, just to see this, it's just large, tall man dressed as Edna Turnblad in Hairspray, it was just fantastic. And he loved to perform, I think, more than anything. So he was truly in his element, and that was great to see him have a chance to do that.
Question number 3. What was your favorite performance of Marc's?
Probably my favorite performance as Marc is when he did the song from Evita. Love that.
One of my favorite performances of Marc's was when he used to do Bring on the Men. And it was actually playing in my living room the other day. And I immediately thought of him and the way that he would sing it and the little additions that he would make and how he would poll the audience. Is that a crime? And half the audience would say yes, and the other half would say no, and he'd say, "You're all liars." What was his thing? I'm sure that this side of the room is just as slutty as that side of the room. And he, every song that he sung, and there were many, many, many songs that he would regularly sing, had their own unique character that just was all his. During his Poor Unfortunate Souls, near the end, he would always tell the piano player, he would say, "Flounder, hands on the keys, fins on the keys, flounder, fins on the keys." And he would often cross himself before high notes, which I always thought was very funny. I think Bring on the Men was one of my favorite of his funny songs, but he had poignant songs that he would do as well.
My favorite, the first song I ever played for him, I was surprised when he requested it, was Love Look Away from Flower Drum Song.
Well, I mentioned earlier in another comment that my way of meeting Marc was him asking me if I knew Love Look Away.
People who know me know I like things that are a little more obscure, so that was a surprising tune for me. For him to request, and I loved playing that for him.
So Marc always sang Love Look Away, and he looked forward to it.
And it was different every time we did it, which was also kind of fun, because I'd follow him, he'd follow me, we'd look at each other, our eyes would roll, and we'd move on.
So whenever I worked, he was like, "Tonight we're going to sing Love Look Away," and he just loved doing that with me.
The ending was always the same, though. He'd go for this high note, and he'd hit the high note, and then he'd pull back to a little pianissimo before he closed it off, and it was actually really sweet. I know he was proud of that technique that he had to do that.
And I loved it equally, just as much as he did.
And it was fun to, be a part of letting him bring that to the world. And, well, to the bar, well, to the basement.
So that would be the answer. Love, Look Away.
One of the poignant songs that I really liked of Mark's was I Chose Right.
One of my absolute favorite really is I Chose Right from Baby. I loved how he did that one.
That was a really good one.
I felt like that one really came from the heart and meant a lot to him as a person and a performer. So I feel you got to see a little bit more of Marc in that particular song, and he always did it beautifully. He had a beautiful tenor voice. It was just stunning.
And he was so talented that he could sing funny songs and he could sing dramatic songs and poignant songs with just equally well.
I always loved it when he sang This Is the Moment. But the one that's sticking in my head right now was When I Look at You.
I love it when he did When I Look at You.
When I Look at You.
That's my favorite one.
Hands down, no question.
It was either When I Look at You or 50%. And it's really for the same reason.
I think that song really spoke to him. And he would allow us to see a part of him that he wasn't necessarily comfortable with showing.
I felt like it was really the most vulnerable that most people got to see, especially in performance and work mode.
But that song allowed him to express that side of him that I think he tried to keep hidden. He didn't keep it hidden as well as he thinks he did, but I think that song really allowed him to show that vulnerable side of him.
And his rendition of it was always so heartfelt, and for some reason that one's kind of sticking in my head right now. It was always just a really sweet change of speed when he did that.
I loved the moments where he was soft and showed vulnerability, because showing vulnerability in that room is a bold choice. It is a bold choice, and I think it is really commendable.
I love when he did women's songs, and I know a lot of the songs he did were for women, most of them.
He just understands the songs in the musical theater canon that are for the women whose stories may not get as much empathy. You know, just the complexity of heartbreak.
You know, I've thought about this, and I know, there's so many things you could say.
Now I had to go through my memory bank on this too. I've heard Marc do a lot of different things.
I also have the privilege of hearing his performances a lot.
And will be said, I mean, The Little Mermaid.
I know most people think of Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Anytime Marc sang Poor Unfortunate Souls.
I'm sure that many folks will say this, but I think that it's undeniable that Marc's version of Poor Unfortunate Souls from the film and musical The Little Mermaid was, to cite an overused word, iconic.
You had to stop. You had to watch.
It is one of the staples of Marie's Crisis that people still mimic the shtick that he would do.
The crowd loved it, but most importantly, he loved it.
Things like, ladies, the few gentlemen that are here. Things like, I'll admit that in the past I've been a nasty. They weren't kidding when they called me, well, a bitch.
And the most iconic Marc line was always, all right, little fishies. That was my favorite. Every time he played Ursula, that one made me laugh, and that one got me.
These are things that were very Marie's Crisis-y stick that Marc very lovingly coined and would perform many times. He always bitched about how we wouldn't let him retire that song, and I think that was kind of like a funny joke, because he really loved performing it and we really loved listening to it, and in a way he was right. We were never going to let him retire that song. So I think definitely Poor Unfortunate Souls for Marc, and I think most people would probably say that. I can envision in years to come, people who never met Marc, unfortunately, young folks who join us at the bar, will probably be doing some of the shtick that he invented, because it's the stuff of legend at Marie's.
He loved singing for people. He just did, and it was evident anytime he opened his mouth to sing. And I really, really miss hearing that.
and I miss him, and I'll miss that performance.
And I loved being one of his fishies. I know you did too.
I'd be crazy if I didn't say that my favorite performance of Marc's was anytime I got to play for him singing Poor Unfortunate Souls, because the way that that song evolved from him just, singing the song as Ursula to just this ridiculously long performance art piece with him making jokes and stretching moments that just didn't need to be stretched. It was really a beautiful evolution. And I just sort of went on the journey with him every time he sang it. It was it was unforgettable. Yeah.
But I think my favorite performance of Marc's is the one that I personally got on Friday nights, standing upstairs in coat check when he would come into work, and he would trudge up the stairs and stop about halfway and always look right at me and just go, "Oy." And I would smile and laugh, and we would move on.
There were little things that he would say to us other staff, at the beginning of a shift, in the middle of shifts, and, that were just hilarious. And they, they'd be similar or exactly the same every shift. So it was a comfort to at least have that sort of regularity, considering that, you never knew what was going to happen at Marie's. You never knew who was going to show up.
But I'll miss that. I really will.
Because COVID happened the way it did, and we were all apart when we lost Marc, it's still hard for me to imagine that he's not going to walk into the bar at some point.
When Marie's is fully open again and people are traveling, there's going to be hundreds of people who are going to come and miss his presence and miss his greeting. And that's going to be very hard.
And because still there are people I don't see who aren't returning to the bar yet. So, but I know they will, right? And so it's difficult to realize that Marc won't be, coming back in.
I will miss working with him every weekend.
I haven't personally been inside of Marie's Crisis in the last year.
It's been difficult going back.
It's going to be weird to be in that building.
It's going to be difficult not having you there.
And not having him there.
And not hear him sing When I Look at You.
I loved hearing him sing it.
Of course, for the other songs, I will never hear them the same. Never hear them the same. They will always have his jokes inserted. They will always have his flair. So they'll be that way forever.
But he'll always be here in my heart.
I'll miss Marc a lot.
I love Marc, and I think of him all the time. And I hope that he's in a happy place now. I miss him.
We really miss him.
He showed me genuine kindness there.
I remember once I told him, anytime you want, let's get to a rehearsal room and plunk out some songs and really just, let's do whatever you want. I really wanted to just sing with him because he just loved singing so much and he loved it. And he always had a vision for the future, always thought the next role I'm going to do, the next thing I'm going to do. He never gave up on it. And he just loved singing and also keeping his opportunities open for that dream to come true. And I'll never forget.
We miss you, Marc.
I miss you, Marc. And I love you, Marc.
His talent and his friendship and his light will be missed.
And I'll continue to wait for him to come down the stairs.
Thank you so much for watching, and let us know what your favorite memories of Marc are, and stick around for more music. Thanks, everybody.
Miss all of you guys. Love you. Mwah.
Mwah.